Friends, today we will start on microscopy. We have done so far on diffraction, and we talked about X-ray diffraction to a large extent, and we will also talk about electron diffraction a little later when we understand the basics of electron microscopy. At that stage we will talk about electron diffraction. At the moment we will start with microscopy. As I told you, when we talk of materials characterization, there are different types of materials characterization that we talked about. One, we said structural characterization, finding out the structure of it. And again we said structure basically can have different levels, we said. And what we talked so far is the crystal structure. When I say structure, you can even talk about electronic structure, you can also talk about atomic structure, then you can talk about the crystal structure, then you can talk about microstructure. So we did not bother about electronic structure and atomic structure in this particular course. That should have been covered in various courses on metal physics for you or material science for you, where people talk about what is the electronic configuration in various atoms. So that is not a part of this particular course. We have started talking about crystal structures and how to determine crystal structures. And one of the most prominent technique for determining the crystal structures is X-ray diffraction. That part we have covered. And we also say that you can also determine the crystal structures using what is called another diffraction technique called electron diffraction. We will slowly jump into that when we come to electron microscopy, and at that stage we will tell you also what is the advantage of doing electron diffraction over X-ray diffraction. Where does X-ray diffraction score better than electron diffraction, where the electron diffraction will score better than the X-ray diffraction, is something which we will cover it as we go along. At the moment what we do is we will basically look at the next stage of structure, which we call it as microstructure. Microstructure. The reason why we need to talk about microstructure is there are so many details inside materials that we need to know in order to understand the properties of materials. For example, one simple thing that I know is that the strength of a metal depends on many things. Can you name a few? I give you a metal called aluminum. What does the strength of this aluminum depend on? Can somebody tell me? Raise your hands. Yes, can you tell me? Grain size and composition. But when I say that I am giving you a metal called aluminum, there is no composition coming into picture at all, because it's a pure aluminum. In case of pure metals, there is no composition factor coming in, because I am not talking it as an alloy. It's a pure metal. In case of a pure metal, there are no alloying elements added, excepting that there may be a few impurities that are there. Impurities do exist in most of the metals. But as far as alloying elements are concerned, there are no deliberately added alloying elements in that material. So we call it as a pure metal. And for such a pure metal, strength to a large extent depends on two factors. Can somebody name those two factors? One, she has already named, the grain size. And we talked about also, possibly people must have told you, how is the grain size related to strength? Can you tell me? There is something called Hall pitch, right? So Hall pitch relation tells you that the sigma yield strength is given by a formula like this, K into D to the power minus half, right? So the yield strength of a material is a function of the D, which is the grain size. I can call it as a grain diameter. Similarly, there is also another thing which controls the mechanical properties, the strength of the material. In case of a pure metal, what is the second thing? Yes, anybody can raise their hands. Pure metal. A pure metal, the strength of a pure metal is decided by one more factor. Yes, crystal structure. Yes, very important, crystal structure. Fine. This is the grain size. This is the structure. How does the crystal structure influence? We said the crystal structure influence because deformation of any metal occurs mostly by what is called slip. And you know, slip is nothing but movement of dislocations on a particular plane in a particular direction, which is called the slip plane and slip direction. and the number of these slip planes and slip directions, which is called the slip systems, is what is going to decide whether a metal is easily deformable or not so easily deformable. The metals which have more number of slip systems, we say the probability of the dislocation motion is more easy. The number of combinations of slip directions and slip planes that are available for a dislocation to move are higher if the slip systems are more. That means dislocation can easily move. If not on this plane, it can move on this plane. If not on this direction, it can move in another direction. If the number of such combinations are more. If the number of combinations that are available for a dislocation to move are fewer, less in number, then we say that material is not so easily deformable. And that's the reason why if you compare an FCC with a BCC, we say FCC is more easily deformable. In fact, not just based on the slip systems. If you carefully observe the slip systems wise, it does not really give you that answer. The reason is, what is the slip plane and slip direction in FCC? Only one of you should talk. Yes, can you tell me what is the slip plane in FCC? 111. What is the slip direction? Very good. So this is slip plane is 111, slip direction is 110. This is shown like this is shown like this. It's opposite. Very good. Thank you very much. This is opposite, this is this, and this is this. This also sometimes we use some other different brackets. When do we use? Very good. So when I am talking of family of these planes, I can call them as family of directions are shown like this, and the family of planes are shown as this. Right? Good. Okay. Now, if I take this, how many total number of slip systems we have in FCC? Why? Because if I take this plane is a triangular plane. This plane, 111 plane, looks like this, right? We give a name to that plane. Anybody knows what is that plane called? It has a 111 number. Like everybody. See, the interesting thing is all of us have names. You have a name, I have a name. But planes may not have a name. So we thought, if I want to differentiate between this plane from some other plane in a unit cell, how do I differentiate? People said, let us give some numbers to them. Okay? And people say, maybe one day from now, there may be only numbers for all of us to differentiate between all of us. So similarly here, we give numbers and we call this as 111 plane. So that the moment I say 111 plane, something comes to my mind. When I say Divya, somebody comes to my mind, let us say. Your name is Divya, right? Okay. So now that your name is recorded in my mind, then once I say this name, so somebody comes to my memory. Similarly, when I say 111, immediately this kind of a triangular plane comes to our mind. When I say 110, okay, one rectangular plane comes to our mind, which cuts the whole unit cell into two pieces. Right? So in this particular plane, there is also a name given to this plane. Only a few of the planes have actually names in the whole crystal structure information. This particular plane is called octahedral plane. The reason why it is called octahedral plane is because there are 8 such planes in a unit cell. If you can find out all the combinations, you will find 8 of them. And in each, unfortunately, though there are 8 such planes, there are 4 sets of planes only are available, because if I take 111 and take bar 1, bar 1, bar 1, these 2 planes are always parallel to each other. If I want to show you, I can show you in an easy way in a crystal structure. If I draw, if this is my 111 plane, this would be my bar 1, bar 1, bar 1 plane. If this is 111, this is bar 1, bar 1, bar 1. If you carefully look at these 2, I mean, you need a little bit of visualization because 3D pictures have to be visualized carefully. So this plane is always parallel to that previous plane, one above the other. Okay, they both are parallel to each other. They do not intersect each other. And such parallel planes are considered as set of planes, one set of planes. So like that, I will have total 8 planes, but 4 sets of planes. And each plane, there are 3 directions. the directions are these. Okay. So each of them will have certain direction. If I consider this direction, what is this direction called? If this is my x-axis, this is my y-axis, this is my z-axis, what is this direction? 1, 1, 0. Right? And what is this direction? We have also talked in one of the classes the Wheeler indices of planes and directions. Yes. 0, 0, 1. Are you sure? Anybody who can know, who can tell me? Yes, there are so many hands, so many hands. Okay, I'll pick up you. 0, 1, 1. Are you sure? Sure? Confident? 0, 1, 1. I think no. I want to take one more call. Anybody else? 0, 1, 1. Confident? Oh. I say no. Can somebody else want to contradict? Somebody who is a little bold enough to say, sorry, that's not right. You can sit down. Anybody who says no, it is something else. 0, 1, 1 bar. 0, 1 bar 1. You see, this is one thing all of you should have, I would say, you should stick to one way of notation. I usually say bar 1. I use the bar first and 1 later. Some people say 1 bar. Both are correct. I do not have any objection to any one of them. But you have to stick to one of them. If you say bar 1, it means it is basically putting a bar on 1. So when you say 0 bar 1, 1. Okay. So that's the correct one. This is 0 bar 1, 1. Why? It is because you are going in the y-axis in the negative direction 1 unit and then going in the z-axis positive direction 1 unit to reach there. Please, you understand? Okay. So this is 0 bar 1, 1. What about this? Look at my vectors. Look at the arrows and then you should tell me. If I had used another arrow like this, you would have got something else. If for this, for example, now tell me for this, what is the direction? I will pick up one. Yes, the second bench I have not been asking. Yes, please. What's your name? Soumya. Soumya, can you tell me this? What is this direction? Yes, Soumya. You know it. 0, 1 bar 1. The previous one also 0, 1 bar 1. This also 0, 1 bar 1. How can both be same? One is going up, one is coming down. Both of them cannot have the same indices. Anybody else in this row? Anybody in this row? You seem to be knowing. Yes. 0, 1, 1 bar. Very good. It is 0, 1, 1 bar. The reason is, again, look at it. Whenever you are talking of directions, remember where are you starting, where are you ending. Only this much you need to know. Okay. So, if I am talking of this vector, I should know where I am starting. I am starting here, I am ending here. How do I reach there? From my starting point, how do I reach the ending point is what I should look at. So, if I want to reach this, I go this direction and then go this direction. Right? That is how I reach that point. So, I have come down in the z-axis. Z-axis is going up actually. So, I have come down in the z-axis by 1 unit distance and I have moved in the y-axis in the positive direction. Y is increasing in this direction. So, because Y is increasing in this direction, I have moved in a positive direction in the y-axis by 1. So, negative minus 1, I mean x-axis negative minus 1, y-axis positive 1 plus 1 and z-axis, x-axis, I mean sorry, this is z-axis, this is y-axis, x-axis I have not moved at all. So, as it is 0. Clear? So, this is 0, 1, 1 bar. Now, I am asking you this one, 1, 0, 1 bar. 1, 0, 1 bar. Let us put it down and then check it, whether she is right or wrong. 1, 0, 1 bar. Right? She is right. Okay, it is 1, 0, 1 bar. Correct? Similarly, if I have put direction in the opposite, it would become 1 bar 0, 1. And 1 bar 0, 1 is negative of the other one. So, these two are considered to be one set of two directions. Okay. So like that. So that means this particular plane has three such directions. Depending on how I look at it. If I am using this kind of a notation, there are three. So because there are four such planes and each plane having three directions, I will say 12. These are called 12 strip systems. What do I mean by 12 strip systems? There are 12 combinations in which the dislocation can move. 12 combinations of plane and directions in which a slip can, the dislocation can move. Now if I jump into the next fellow, what is called the BCC. BCC. Now somebody has to tell me what is the slip plane and slip direction. 1, 0, 0. 1, 1, 0 is the plane. And the direction? 1, 1, 1. Now can you tell me how many planes are there? And so again I have to do this. This is the one and this is the one. Now let's look at this particular plane. Where is that plane? Again draw the unit cell. This plane is what we are talking. 1, 1, 0. Correct? So in this 1, 1, 0 plane, okay, how many directions are there? How many slip directions are there? If I can write this 1, 1, 0 plane separately outside, it looks like this. Is it a rectangle or a square? First of all, rectangle. Why? Because this length is different from this length. What is this length? What is this length? If I call this as A and B, what is this B? B and A, what is the relation? B is root 2 A. If this is B for me and if this is A, B is root 2 of A. Right? So root 2 is bigger than A. So as a result, I can say this is root 2A and this is A. Correct? So that is a rectangle. In this rectangle, which are the 1, 1, 1 directions? Where are those directions? Can I see it in this plane? If I put some vectors, where are those vectors? I can talk of variety of vectors in this plane. One is this, another is this, another is this, another is this. Is any of these 1, 1, 1? No. Then where is 1, 1, 1? It is the diagonals. Correct. It is these diagonals which are the 1, 1, 1. So for example, this diagonal and this diagonal, they are called the body diagonals, which are the 1, 1, 1. So for example, if I am choosing this particular vector, again you can see that I am starting from here. Can somebody tell me what is the indices of this? Who will tell me? This is the vector. I am drawing it once again with a different color for you. So I am interested in this vector. Can somebody tell me what is that vector? 1 bar 1 0. Let me put it down. And then 1 bar 1 0. I think no. Anybody else? 1 0 1 0 1. Last fellows. 1 bar 1. Okay, let me take that. And then 1 bar 1. Let's try to see. We are starting here. This is the X, this is the Y, this is the Z for us. We are starting here. If I want to reach there, how do I reach? I go in this direction and in this direction and in this direction. Right? So this is Y positive 1, X negative 1, okay, Z positive 1. So yes, it is 1 bar 1 1. This is the correct. Right? So I am moving like this and reaching there. Because if I want to reach that corner from this, okay, you can say, sir, why should I go like this? I will go in this direction, and in this direction. That's also possible. If I go in this direction, negative in the X by 1, positive in the Y 1, and positive in the Z 1. Whether I move in this direction or in this direction, because both are parallel to each other, is the same. So it is bar 1 in the x, 1 in the y, 1 in the z. So it is bar 1, 1, 1. This is very, very simple. Directions are much simpler than even finding out planes. Planes, you need to talk about reciprocals, all those issues. Here it's very simple. Vectors, it is simply just finding out how to find a vector. So this is how it is. And similarly, if I take the negative of this, the negative of this will be negative of this. What is the negative of this? 1 bar 1 bar 1. 1 bar 1 bar in your notation. Whatever your teachers have said, so you stick to that. Okay. I usually call it as 1 bar 1 bar 1. Okay. So fine. So this is how we can find out. What is the second one? Let us find out this fellow. And raise your hands. I will pick up one of you. Yes. This girl didn't say so far. Yes. 1 bar 1 bar. Okay. Let me try to say 1 bar 1 bar. This is what she says. Let me see whether this is right. C axis minus 1, y axis plus 1, z axis minus 1. Very good. Correct. It is 1 bar 1 bar. And if I take the reverse of this, that means I am starting from here. I am going like this, going like this, going like this. Okay. That means in the x direction I am going positive. That is 1. Y direction I am going negative. 1 bar. And z direction positive. You see, it immediately becomes inverse of that. Okay, so you can easily find out. So now the question is, how many slip directions are there or in each plane? How many? How many slip directions are there in each plane? 4. What are these 4? You are saying 1 sir, 2 sir, 3 sir and 4 sir. Is it like that? If I had considered like that, in this plane, I should have considered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We didn't do that, right? The negative direction we are not considering. We consider it as one direction. So as a result, you see here we consider it as 3, here we consider 2. And how many planes are there? 110 planes. 12 planes. And actually, it is called dodecahedral plane. Very good. It's called a dodecahedral plane. Dodeca. Deca is 10, do is 2. That's why it's 12. Okay. So, though there are 12 planes, again, this is a situation that there will be parallel planes. So for example, 110 plane and bar 1 0 plane are all parallel. Both of them are parallel to each other. So as a result, out of this 12, finally I get only 6. Okay, 6 set of planes. Into each plane will have 2. Right? And that gives you 12. Now you can clearly see actually the number of slip systems for FCC and BCC are the same. If you consider only the closest packed planes, they are always the same. That is also 12, this is also 12. But when you say for BCC, we have 48 slip systems. Why is that so? For FCC also you should have considered more things. The reason why we say 48 is because we not only consider 110, we consider other planes also. What are the other planes that we consider? 10? 100 we don't consider. In BCC 100 is the least packed. 210, yes. 210 and one more. See, this is one problem with many of us. If we are not confident, we talk it in such a voice that even the next fellow will not be able to hear. If you are confident, you should say loudly. If I remember right, it is 1, 2, 3. The issue is why we say these additional slip planes is because of one single reason. The reason is that this plane is not as close packed as this plane. 111 plane of FCC is the closest packed plane that you can think of. The packing density of that plane. Do you know how to calculate packing density of a plane? Okay. When you say packing density of a unit cell, you can also talk of packing density of a plane. That means the area in that plane occupied by atoms. If I calculate that, you will see that for 111 it turns out to be 91%. This particular plane, if I put atoms at each of these and put atoms here touching each other, all of them are touching each other. This is how this plane is. The face-centered atoms touching each other. Whereas in this, you have atoms here. You have a central atom. This is how this plane is. The central atom is touching the two corner atoms, and this also, obviously, it will touch the corner atoms. Only thing is, these two will not touch each other. These two will not touch each other. Okay? And if you calculate what is the void space here, you will see that the void space here, percentage of the void space is more in this 110 when compared to this. Today, I want you to go back and calculate this. Or have you already done it some stage? If you have done that, please tell me what is the number. What is the packing density of 110 plane? If not, just note down this as an exercise, do it, and when we meet in the next class, please let me know. So you will find out that it is less than. And similarly, do the same thing for 111 to confirm what I said is right. Teachers can always be wrong. You have to correct the teacher if the teacher is wrong. There is nothing wrong in doing so. So sometimes we can be wrong. And you should have the confidence to correct it. It's very, very important. And so the reason why this we have to consider the other planes is because this is not as close packed. And because it is not as close packed plane, it is, that the slip on this plane is not so easy. And why do we need to bother about close packed planes? Do you have any? Why do we need to have slip occurring on close packed planes? What's wrong? Why can't it happen on loose packed planes? Why is that slip has to occur on close packed planes? Why should I consider only 111 in FCC? Why not 100? Why not 110? What is so great about so-called close packed planes? Why can't dislocations move on loose packed planes? They can move, but the stress required to move a dislocation on a close packed plane is the smallest. What is yield stress? How do you define a yield stress? Anybody tells me? Raise your hands, I'll ask you. This at least question should be known to everybody. I would like to see all the hands raising. No? What is yield stress? What is yield stress? Only define yield stress. Why dislocation is coming in the yield stress? The dislocation does not come in the yield stress. What is yield stress? If somebody asks you to define yield stress, what will you do? Energy, if I can call it in terms of stress, the minimum stress that is required to cause a permanent deformation in a material, please sit down, is what is called yield stress. Permanent deformation. Why I should bother about this is because there is also deformation before the yield stress. And that deformation is only elastic deformation. Right? Up to if you draw the stress strain diagram, you would have seen something like this. And up to this point is what we call it as a yield stress. Up to this point also there is some deformation. But that deformation is called elastic deformation. When I remove the stress, the material goes back to original position. But if I apply a stress greater than the yield stress, then whatever deformation that is caused inside the material is a permanent deformation. And if I remove the stress, the material does not go back to the original position. That particular deformation is a plastic deformation, we call it. The previous one is called elastic deformation. Right? So that is what is the definition of yield stress. The stress required to cause plastic deformation or a permanent deformation is called this. And this, if you translate it into what is called the shear stress required for causing the dislocation to move, we use another terminology there called CRSS. Yes. So critical result shear stress is an equivalent of your yield stress in terms of dislocation motion. What is the minimum stress, shear stress that is required to cause a deformation. And this, why do we need to consider only closed packed planes for that? You will see that the stress required to cause the dislocation to move is higher on a loose packed planes when compared to closed packed planes. Because deformation is always considered as what is the minimum stress that is required. So whichever plane where the stress required to deform is minimum, the dislocation would like to move in that plane when compared to moving in another plane where the stress required for deformation is larger. And that minimum is on a closest packed plane. The reason is why it is minimum on a closed packed plane. Yes, you have an answer? Have you gone through this part any time in any of the courses? Yes, I will come to you. You are saying the same statement what I am saying in a different form. That's it. I said the stress required to move the dislocation is the lowest on the closest packed plane. But my question is why? You are saying the energy required is lower on that. There is no difference between these two statements. I am asking you why it is lower. Why it is lower to the stress required is lower on a closest packed plane. If I am comparing two planes, one is closed packed, another is loose packed plane, the stress required to move the dislocation on the closed packed plane is lower when compared to stress required to move on a loose packed plane. Why is this lower? Why is this higher? That is the question. Yes. Or you want to answer that? Please answer it. Sit down. Very easier. Okay. Why? The energy required to break the bonds and recombination of the bonds is lower if they are close packed. Always, if you want to really grow in any subject, keep posing these whys. As many whys. At the end of every class, if you can write down the questions that come to your mind, why is this? Why is that? Why is this? And try to find out answers for all of them. Then you would have really become an expert on that subject. I request all of you, please sit down. Some stage, read a book called Electrons, Atoms, Metals and Alloys. It's a fascinating book. When I was a student like you, I have read this book. The title of the book is Electrons, Atoms, Metals and Alloys, written by a great gentleman by name Hume Rothery. All of you have heard of Hume Rothery, right? Hume Rothery writes this book to make a person understand what is the connection between actually this whole atomic structure and the whole material's behavior. The book is written as a dialogue between a physicist and a metallurgist. A metallurgist who was only casting metals and alloys, he meets this physicist in a conference and he says, whatever quantum mechanics that you are talking is of no use to me. Why should I bother about quantum mechanics? This physicist says, if you understand quantum mechanics, you will make better alloys with better properties. I am going to prove to you why is it so. And this whole thing is like a fiction, is written as if the metallurgist is asking a question and the fellow is answering, the physicist is answering. The whole book is question and answers. A fascinating book, but unfortunately it is not available at the moment, not as a print, but it should be available in some libraries. If you don't get this, you can ask one of your teachers to ask me. I have a photocopy of it. I can spare that photocopy so that you can make a photocopy and keep it, because the original textbook, unless there are institutes which are established before 60s, that book is, the last print of that book is possibly 1960s, between 60 and 70. That's it. After that, that book was not printed much. So the book that I found was around 64 or so. I was born in 64. So the book is as old as I am. So this book is a fascinating book where he tries to connect the electronic configuration to finally the properties of metals and alloys. And the reason why I am saying this, there are so many whys that this fellow keeps on asking, which are answered there. So that's one of the questions that we are talking about right now. And why is it you need closed packed structures? Tell me. Correct. Do you mean by this deformation means atoms are moving? You are very close, very close. May not be able to express exactly the terms that it need to be expressed. I always remember this new movie that has come, Three Idiots. How many of you have seen that? Oh, everybody. Good. So you must have seen that conversation in that movie where there is a teacher and a student. Definition of a machine. Whenever I listen to that, I laugh at it. So that's true. So why I have to tell you this is, again, I will take you. I'm sorry to do this, but I have to do this. There was a long back a great scientist, a very, very great scientist. I will tell you the name a little later. I do not know how many of you have heard of this story, where a teacher gives a student a barometer and asks him to measure the height of some 5-storied building or so. Have you read this story anywhere? None of you? Okay. So this story goes like this. It's a true story. A teacher gives him a barometer and tells me measure the height of this 5-storied building using this barometer. How would you measure the height of a 5-story? Find out the height of a 5-story building using a barometer. Can you tell me? A barometer is given to you. You need to find out the height of a particular multi-storied building. What would you do? Yes, who want to answer? Raise your hands. A barometer is given to you. You need to find out the height of a building. How do you use a barometer to find the height of a building? Not the storage material. No. Yes, you are measuring the pressure, very good, correct. But beyond that, you actually derailed a little bit. Okay. Yes, now take the clue from there and answer this. You have heard this story before. Okay. Who is the hero in this? Who? I mean, of course. What is the answer for this question? If you measure the pressure at the foot of the building and measure the pressure at the top of the building, we know the atmospheric pressure changes with height. And we go, as you go to higher and higher heights, okay, the pressure decreases or increases? Which is decreases. How many want to support her? Some of them raise like this. She is right actually. It decreases. For example, in fact, if you are flying in an aircraft at a height of around 10 kilometers from the sea level, so that's where usually most of the flights fly, the pressure outside is very low. And inside people actually pressurize the whole chamber. If you don't, what happens is the whole aircraft will crumble because of the vacuum which is available outside. Okay. So that's why if there is a small hole in the aircraft, if you make a small crack in the aircraft, that's it. The whole thing will, because outside is vacuum. You will all just fly into that vacuum. The vacuum will suck all of you. That's why in some movies where aircraft breaks, I mean some crack is formed, you will see this. So this is what, if you measure that pressure is related to mgh. Okay, and one can find out the height. So, but the problem is this fellow does not give that answer. He writes all kinds of answers. He says, I will make this particular barometer as a pendulum and hang it from the top of the top floor, and then from the simple harmonic motion, I will find out the height of the building. He will say also that I will take this barometer, throw it from the top of the building, and measure the time it has taken for falling onto the floor. And then from that I will find out the height of the building. But he does not write the answer just now what we have discussed. So the teacher is confused what to do, whether I should give marks to this fellow or does not give marks. Because nowadays you all have this bubbling business. Okay, unfortunately, all IITs we are, unofficially quoting, we are not really happy with this bubbling. Because when you do this bubbling, you only get the answer right or wrong, but you do not know what is the process of thinking that has gone in the mind of the student when he is giving this. For example, this kind of answers if he gives, you do not know whether you should give marks to this fellow or do not give marks to this, because the answers are actually right. The two answers that I gave you right now are also correct answers, but they are not a conventional answer. Okay? Because if I give you a stone also, you would have written this same answer. But I have given you a barometer. Okay? Barometer means something, that there is a clue in the barometer that is given to the student. So he gets confused, the teacher, goes to another professor and says, what do we do this with this fellow? Should we pass him or fail him? And then that professor says, why don't we call this fellow and ask him whether he knows the answer that we are thinking, like the professor in Three Idiots, the definition of a machine. Okay, he has some answer in his mind. He wants that answer alone should come out from the student. And then he asks, do you know the conventional answer for this question? There is a conventional answer for this question. Do you know that? Then the student says, I do not want to think conventionally. That was the answer given by that student. Like the hero of the Three Idiots, this fellow also was a hero, and he actually became a hero much later. He is Niels Bohr. Okay, so one of the Nobel laureates, okay, who got a Nobel Prize because of this, what we call it as out-of-box thinking. You should be able to think beyond your class text. Should be able to think answers which are not traditionally given, and then only you will be able to think something new. Obviously, research is nothing. If you want to become a researcher one day, you need to learn how to think differently from all the people around you and think something new. Then only PhD is possible. Unless you create something new which does not exist, you cannot get a PhD. So anyway, so this is how we are talking about. So the question is here, why is close-packed planes having easy dislocation motion? What she partially said is that when the distance between atoms is very small, this what we called, one of the friends said, the breaking up of the bonds and the reconstruction of the bonds is much easier when compared to when the atoms are separated far off. And that's the reason why you need close-packed planes. And now, if I compare, now you may say, sir, this BCC also has 12 slip systems, FCC also has 12 slip systems. So in principle, both of them have same number of slip systems. So they both should be equally deformable. It is not so. The reason is the 111 of FCC is more close packed than the 110 of the BCC. That's why the 110, the FCC unit cell can deform more easily than the BCC unit cell. And that's the reason why people have to, the crystal structure tries to search for other planes and directions where the dislocation can also deform reasonably easily. And that is how you get the 48 slip systems. Though you have 48 slip systems, none of these 48 slip systems are as close packed, slip planes are as close packed as the 111 of the FCC. So it's not just the numbers that are important. Even with 48 slip systems, the BCC is still not easily deformable as an FCC. So FCC is more deformable than BCC. So as you said, we have been talking, I have really deviated significantly from one single point where we said that crystal structure matters. Matters in terms of deformation, whether a material can easily deform or not so easily deform. But I compare now with this BCC and FCC to something called HCP, hexagonal close packed. Hexagonal close packed, you know how many slip systems? 3. There is only one slip plane which is called the basal plane, the top and the bottom, which both of them are close packed, and both of them are parallel to each other. Though there are two, we only consider one because we have been so far considering like that only. Whenever there are two parallel planes, only one plane is considered. So that is called the basal plane. And in the basal plane, there are how many directions? Let me draw the basal plane for you. 3. So if the basal plane of hexagonal looks like this, right? It looks like a hexagon, and it is hexagon. So, and if this is the one, this is one, and this is another, and the third one is this. A, B, C, let us say. These are the 3 slip directions. Sir, you may say, sir, why are you talking of only these 3? There are 3 more also. And those 3 more are very easily can be seen that this is one, and this is another, and this is another. They are negatives of those 3. That's why we are not considering them. So we only consider 3 directions. That means on this plane, the dislocation can move in any one of those 3 directions. So we say 3 slip systems. one plane, 3 directions, 1 into 3. There are no more slip planes and slip directions in hexagonal. And because there are only 3 slip systems, we say hexagonal metals with hexagonal structure are not so easily deformable. Okay, so FCC is the closest, is the easiest deformable structure. And one more point that we need to say is also not only it is easily deformable, it is also a good material for even high temperature application. Wherever you want to use a material for creep applications, we again use FCC because it has a closed pack structure. Whenever it has a closed pack structure, atoms cannot vibrate more easily. Atoms do not diffuse more easily. And at high temperature, one of the problems in terms of material deformation is called creep. And if a material can easily, atoms can easily diffuse, the creep can easily happen. So if you can choose a structure where diffusion is very difficult, then the creep resistance is very high. So FCC is the ideal material to be used for high temperature application. So crystal structure matters, and with that we'll stop now and we'll take up in the next class rest of the things.